Hey there! I know some of you guys are ready to go ahead and start glazing today, so since I still have a lot of people who are working on the coat of arms, I'm going to not do a glazing demonstration in class, but I am going to go ahead and have you watch this short video about glazing, and then I'm going to have you take a very short little quiz. So this should be posted on Edpuzzle. So once you get 100% on the quiz, you may go ahead and start glazing your turtle, your face, and then any other small things that you've made that have been fired. So if you have anything over here in the bisque area, you're welcome to go ahead and start glazing those things today, as long as you've passed the quiz, okay? So a couple things I just want to go over with you real quick as far as glazing goes. It's not like using just regular paint. The glazes are specifically made to go on ceramics. They turn into glass when they're in the kiln, and of course they're in liquid form in the bottle. They dry and become a solid, and then when they're in the kiln they become a liquid again when they get hot, and then when they're cooling down they become a solid again. So there are several different things that you have to remember. Glaze can be really problematic, but it can also be really helpful if you need to make any repairs on your piece of artwork. So pay close attention, and then you can go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you where the glazes are and kind of how to get them and how to use them and all the materials that you're going to need when you're ready to get started. And then I'm going to go over how you should glaze and some things that you need to keep in mind, okay? So behind me here, I'm going to just go ahead and move over here. Behind me here, you see the cart of glazes. I have a variety of different colors here in the bottles, and then over here on the other side there's a cart that has some more glazes. So on the bottom of this cart right here is a basket that has all these super cute little tiles that are different colors. You saw these when we were doing our stages of clay demonstration. These are going to give you an idea of what the glazers are going to look like when they come out of the kiln. So if you look on the back of these little tiles, it should tell you what the name of that glaze is called. But some of them also have, as you can see, they actually have the name of the glaze imprinted on there. So go ahead and look through these to find the colors that you want. And keep in mind that what you see in the bottle here is not always what you're going to get when you look at the tiles of the ones that are finished. So I'm going to set those to the side and show you an example. This specific glaze right here is called dark yellow, and as you can see in the bottle, it's like a maroonish red kind of color, and it's kind of shut a little bit, but it's not going to look like this when it comes out of the kiln. This actually, when it fires, is going to come out as like a dark yellowish color. So keep that in mind. Make sure you're looking at those examples that I have in the basket right here before you make a choice on your colors, okay? I don't have an example for every single glaze because I've gotten some new ones and I haven't had a chance to make the new tiles for the examples. The ones over here on the small rack, feel free to use those. I don't have examples of those yet because those are some of the newer ones, but these tall bottles like this, these ones are going to be pretty close to the same color that you see on the label. This is called a teacher's palette glaze. It's just a different brand, and this one is the actual color that it's going to be when it comes out, so keep that in mind. But most of them are not. Another thing to keep in mind when you're glazing is that you can't just mix colors. So if you're thinking you want to use an orange and I don't have an orange glaze, but I do have red and yellow, you're thinking, oh, I could just go ahead and mix those two together to get an orange glaze. It just doesn't work like that. So please, please, please do not mix the glazes. Just work with the ones that we currently have in the bottles, okay? All right, so here are a couple things you need to keep in mind. I'm going to go ahead and move my camera down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. So we have our turtles and we have our faces and we have some other things that you have created, just little small things that you've made for fun. And you're welcome to go ahead and glaze any of those things today. So you're going to need some glaze. You're going to need a small paintbrush. Please don't use a giant one. A smaller or medium is going to work just fine. And you're also going to need a cup of water. I prefer that you use a dry paper towel on the table just so that we're not making a giant mess. It just is going to help with cleanup a whole bunch. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up my little glaze bottle here. There we go. And as you can see, it's kind of like a chalky kind of paint in there. It doesn't turn shiny until we put it in the kiln. So please keep that in mind. So I mentioned that the glaze can really be either problematic or it can be really, really helpful. So a way that the glazes can be problematic is that because they turn into a liquid and then back into a solid while they're in the kiln, if you get anything on the bottom of your piece of artwork, so the bottom of the turtle's feet or the back of your face, like the back of the person's head, if you get glaze on that part and then we set it in the kiln, it's going to turn into a liquid when it gets hot and then back into a solid when it cools down, and it's going to fuse to the kiln shelf, and we're going to have to break your piece of artwork to get it out of the kiln. I don't want to have to do that. So please don't glaze anything that is touching the table. If you set your piece on the table, just kind of make note of where it's touching and don't glaze those parts. A way that it can be really helpful is that, let's say your shell fell off and you need to reattach that. You can glaze underneath the shell and we can set it on there in the kiln, and then it'll fuse that shell back onto your turtle. So that is one way that we can make some repairs with the glazes, okay? All right, so when you're ready to start glazing, you're just going to grab one color of glaze at a time. Please do not grab 3 or 4 colors and bring them back to your table. First of all, that is being stingy, and we don't want you to take colors that everybody else wants to use. Other people could be using them during that time, and that's just not nice. So just take one at a time. Another reason you shouldn't do that is because a lot of times people drop the glazes. The glazes have a tendency to break open when they are dropped, and then we get glaze everywhere, and it's a big giant mess. And guess who gets to clean up the mess if you spill a glaze? You do. And I know that you probably don't want to clean up glaze all morning. So please, please, please be careful with them, one at a time, and just take them to your table and go back and get another one when you're ready, okay? All right, so when you're ready to start glazing, you don't need to like add water. You don't need to take your water cup and dip your brush in the water first. Just go ahead and very gently dip into the glaze. Make sure that you're not sticking your brush all the way down in there. Just get it on the end of your brush like you normally would, okay? And then you can just go ahead and start brushing it onto your turtle. I would say if you have a texture on the back of your turtle, go ahead and make sure that it gets down inside the texture. You want to make sure that you get everything coated really well. I would also suggest using at least 2 coats of glaze on any place that you're glazing. Places that aren't going to be glazed, like if you want it to still be that white color, we'll put a clear coat over that. We don't want to leave anything bisque. It's not going to be finished if we have any bisque places showing. So go ahead and make sure you put 2 coats. You'll notice that the glaze dries really quickly. So by the time I'm finished with the shell on this side, the other side where I just started is probably already going to be dry, and I can go back and start my second coat over there already. And I'm just about done with that part. I'm trying to get all up in there. All right, so now I've got the inside of the little shell glazed. It's just about dry, so I can go back and start with my second coat on there. Make sure that you do 2 coats, because even though you can't see your brush strokes right now, a lot of times once they come out of the kiln, you can see the brush strokes in the glaze, and that just doesn't look very good. So make sure you get a nice coat on there, let it dry, and go back and do a second coat. Okay. So now I'm finished with that color. I'm going to rinse in my little water cup here. I'm going to go back and get a different color, because that's what we do, 1 color at a time. I'm going to put the lid on this very carefully and go over and get another color. All right, and I'm going to go with, let's say, Midnight Blue. Okay. So I'm just giving that one a little shakeroo because I'm not sure if it's been opened yet. Oh, it has. And my brush is nice and clean. I can go ahead and move on. So I'm going to go ahead and do the little feet on this guy so you can kind of see what it would look like when it's done being glazed. So I'm going to glaze his little legs like this, but I'm going to leave the bottoms of his feet glaze free. We're going to leave those bisque so that he doesn't get stuck to the kiln shelf. I can get everything else glazed under there, all the other turtle parts, everything except for the bottom of the feet. The cool thing is that if you accidentally do glaze the bottom of the feet, or if you just accidentally brush over the bottom of the feet without thinking, the glazes are all water soluble, so we can just take a wet sponge or a wet paper towel and just wipe the glaze off of any part that didn't need to be glazed. So don't freak out if you accidentally do get the glaze on the bottom of the feet or the back of the head. We can always clean them up later. Okay. All right, so see how I have everything glazed down there except for the very bottom of his little feet? Because if I set them down, the bottom of the feet is the part that's going to touch the kiln shelf or touch the table. Okay. Same thing applies when you're doing the face. Make sure that you glaze the entire thing except for the back. Set it down and see where it touches the table. Anywhere that it touches the table, leave that area bisque. I have a lot of people ask if they have to glaze the inside of the mouth. The answer is yes. Everything except for the back should be glazed. So the bisque material, this white glass that we have when it comes out of the kiln, is called porous. That means it has teeny weeny tiny little holes in it and can absorb moisture or anything else that's in there. So I've had a couple people say that they were going to put things like cereal in their little face that they've made. You don't want your gross, disgusting leftover milk to sit in there and get absorbed into the bisque glass. So make sure that everything is glazed. That's going to keep everything really sanitary and just give it a more finished look. And they just look cooler when you glaze the inside of their mouths anyway. So that's my glazing spiel. Please make sure that you watch this video and take the quiz before you move on to glazing. If you have questions, please ask. I'm happy to answer glaze questions for you. And when you're finished glazing, go ahead and set your pieces on the counter in the glazed section. There is a sign that says glazed with an arrow pointing down. Set them in the glazed section if they are done. If you start glazing and you don't get finished, put them in the closet so that you can keep working on them when you get back to class the next day. Okay? If you have questions, please ask. I hope you have fun glazing. You're going to love it. It's such a fun process. And then when we open the kiln after a glaze firing, it's like Christmas every time because it's just so fun and exciting. So thanks. Have an awesome day.